David Benavidez versus David Morrell. The Battle of the Davids, 12 rounds, 175-pound division. This on paper is arguably, it has the potential to be the fight of the year this early on in the year. Let's get into it. Let's start with their respective records. Benavidez, 29 wins, no losses, 24 wins by way of knockout. David Morrell, 11 wins, no losses, and 9 wins by way of knockout. Physically, these guys aren't giving up too much, right? I mean, Morrell has the reach by 2 inches. That's not too big of a deal right there, in my opinion. These two have been mentioned alongside each other for the past few years. However, it's really been more of David Morrell kind of calling out David Benavidez. I think he probably started doing that within the 6th, 7th, or 8th fight. It was very early on. You can't blame him, right, for an up-and-coming fighter who's very skilled, very talented, to call out the big dogs on your way up as you're trying to become a big dog yourself, especially once atop the division and possibly becoming a champion in the division. Now, he started at 168, and when David Benavidez went up to 175, he did the same. Talk about going after what you want and then hitting the target. So now he's been calling David Benavidez. Well, now he's going to be right here, right in front of him. When we talk about skill set, right, both men do what they do very well. David Morrell, to me, is more athletic than David Benavidez. He's a little slicker in the ring, better footwork. He is faster, to me, in my opinion. And with that athleticism, he'll be able to get in and to get out and pick his spots a little smoother than Benavidez. Now, Benavidez has the experience of fighting better, higher level opposition. He fought fast opponents as well, too. He's fought guys who can move in, slip out, and control the range and the speed, right? He's seen that type of speed before, in my opinion. It may look packaged differently, but he's seen a guy who can move in the sense of Caleb Plant. I think David Benavidez puts his combinations better than David Morrell, and I think his hand speed is a little faster than David Morrell. Now, I know everybody always says David Benavidez, he's flat-footed, he can't move, he's slow. And yeah, we know he's flat-footed. We know he may not be as fast as some of the other guys, nor as athletic, but to this point, no one has fully been able to take advantage of that for 12 rounds, right? Maybe the first half of the fight, but he always comes on strong and he always seems to figure it out as the fight goes on, at least from what we've seen so far, especially at 168. And we've seen a good sample size at 175 when he fought Alexander Gvozdyk, right? There were a lot of people who gave him a hard time about that fight. But I thought he dominated that fight, and he looked good consistently throughout that fight. Yeah, he might have gotten a little winded towards the end there, but you got to give someone grace, especially when it's their first time fighting in that specific division. Not to mention, you know, it wasn't older Alexander Gvozdyk, but that man was still a former champion in the division. That man's got a chin. That's a very solid fighter right there. David Morrell, in his first showing at 175, he fought Hot Rod. Although he won the fight, man, I don't think it was as smooth sailing as a lot of people might say that it is, right? I felt like Morrell came into that fight and he was trying to prove a point. He was headhunting a lot in that fight. He was showing he wasn't afraid of what was coming at him from Hot Rod in that fight. He was gunning for the knockout heavily. And sometimes when he swung and missed, it was very wide and it did not look pretty, right? He didn't go to the body as much as we've seen him done before. He threw a lot of power punches, not a lot of jabs. But with that being said, he's got the tools, every type of tools in his toolbox to make him a successful fighter as he's done so far. He can find almost any shot, and his placement when he finds his rhythm and his groove, man, he's a dangerous opponent. Defensively, because he was headhunting so much, he was open to getting hit against Hot Rod, but Hot Rod didn't take those risks that he needed to and probably should have, right? However, Hot Rod landed some really good shots on David Morrell, but it wasn't a shot to make him discouraged by no means. It was shots that kind of popped and shocked him a little bit, but it never deterred him from coming forward because Morrell took those shots like a champ and kept coming forward and kept letting his hands go. Now, we know Morrell is a southpaw, and though he can fight unorthodox. He's a switch hitter. He's a natural southpaw. And we know that can be some trouble for orthodox fighters if they've never seen it before, especially if they're not used to it. Well, David Benavidez, he's used to that as well, too. He fought one of the top 160 pounders that came up to 168 in a guy named Demetrius Andrade, who a lot of people were at one point did not want to fight him because he was tricky. He was athletic, he was powerful, he was quick, and the movement was just a little bit awkward enough to make him a tough fighter to face. And I was very surprised at the outcome of that fight because David Benavidez took him out in 6 rounds. I didn't think that he was going to be able to stop Demetrius Andrade. But Benavidez looked excellent in that fight. I thought the caliber of the southpaw of Andrade was going to give him a little bit of problems. Even though Andrade is a natural 160 and he was coming up, I still felt like he had some skills that was going to frustrate Benavidez, but that was not the case. It was Benavidez who dominated the fight. Look, Benavidez is not the most flashiest fighter, right? But he's also tricky to plan for because in the ring, he moves better than what the tape shows. And when he gets close to you, you got to be careful, man, because you might have a 6 to 7 piece combination coming your way before you even get your shots off. His hand speed is faster than most fighters think, right? So not to mention, he's got a plethora of shots, man. I've seen this man in one fight hit a 4-piece uppercut back to back to back to back. Like, you know, he has an unorthodox style of doing things, but it works for him. Now, some might say, you know, David Morrell, 11 fights in, he's not experienced to fight David Benavidez. He doesn't have the caliber of opponents that he's faced to make me say that he can beat him. That's what some people might say, right? While he might not have the professional fight as much as David Benavidez, David Morrell is a very experienced fighter. He's had a lot of amateur fights, right? We've seen guys who may not have had a lot of professional fights, but had a lot of amateur experience and have a really successful career and then dominate and become champions. We've seen it a bunch of times, and the name that comes to mind is Vasily Lomachenko. David Morrell, he's fought some pretty big talents in the amateur division, right? He's fought big names like Julio Cesar La Cruz, the 2-time Olympic gold medalist from Cuba. He's also fought his other fellow Cuban, Osles Iglesias. We know what that man can do. We know how heavy-handed and how powerful that he is. So he's fought guys who can move, he's fought guys who are skilled, and he's fought guys who can punch, and he's had success against those guys as well. Now, of course, this is not the amateurs. The style is different, right? And I don't think he's ever seen someone quite like the package of David Benavidez before. One of the best fights I've seen from David Benavidez, man, personally for me, was when he fought Caleb Plant, because he had to be patient and he had to operate with a high level of execution and IQ. He knew that Plant would jump out early on the cards because Plant is fast, man. He's shifty, man. That's a really good boxer right there. But he had to stay patient. And eventually, if he stayed patient enough and didn't let his emotions get the best of him and not get frustrated, he would have his moments as the fight went on. And when the moment presented himself, when Caleb Plant got tired, that's when David Benavidez started to take over and started to impose his will and his skill set on Caleb Plant. And the momentum of the fight completely turned. He knows how to handle the pressure when his back is against the wall. That's a question that we aren't sure if David Morrell can do that just yet because we haven't fully seen it, right? If he gets knocked down and he's under immense pressure, is he going to just start swinging for the hills, or is he going to stay composed, stay calculated, and box on the outside, regroup, and not put himself in harm's way if that so happens to be something that goes down in this fight? How you handle pressure matters. We've seen Benavidez handle pressure. Haven't really fully seen David Morrell do that same thing. It doesn't mean that he's not capable of it. We just haven't seen it as much as we've seen David Benavidez handle it. We could go back and forth about both guys, right? But this is going to be a great fight. And hats off to both men for taking this fight because they really did not have to. So who wins? If David Benavidez wins, man, it's kind of going to be, regular scheduled programming, right? But he will get the respect from the supporters of the sport of boxing. It's not a massive pay-per-view fight, in my opinion, especially to the casuals, but it's a big fight to us who enjoy watching the sport of boxing. He's more experienced, right? Now, if David Morrell wins, it completely messes up everything that David Benavidez has been working to do, right? People will say he's been a big hype job, like he wasn't that good, and all these different things that comes with losing a fight. And then it's going to be an uphill battle climb to get back to where he was. So in this fight, who has more to lose? It's definitely David Benavidez who has more to lose. More to lose, less to gain, in my opinion. Now, David Morrell is early enough in his career where a loss wouldn't be too detrimental and wouldn't really harm his career too much, right? But a win skyrockets him to maybe even getting a title shot for the winner of Bivol Better BF 2. It's that type of fight for him. I don't think this fight is going to come down to skill per se, man. I think this is going to come down to who is going to will themselves a little bit more. Both guys are going to fight their fight. At least that's what you would think, right? They know what they can do. They know their skill set. They know their strengths, and they definitely know their weaknesses. But when the going gets tough, man, you got to dig deep. Right? And can you keep throwing when you're tired? Can you stay composed mentally, physically, emotionally when you are tired? Can you not get emotionally attached if you're losing momentum and you put yourself in harm's way and you might find yourself on the canvas? So this is going to be a great fight, man. Both guys have the potential to beat each other. Both guys can even stop each other, in my opinion. So you can't really go wrong with whomever that you are picking. If you're someone who is heavy into betting, you're going to pick the underdog. And even the underdog price is a great outcome and a great, thing to take a risk on because this fight could go either way. I like both of these guys. While my heart says David Morrell, man, I'm going with my head. I like David Benavidez to win this fight by decision. I've just seen more of a sample size of composure under pressure from David Benavidez than I have of David Morrell. And that's really what it comes down to for me, because skill for skill, these guys are right there. Right? They both do what they do extremely well, and this is a fight that could go either way. But in this one, I'm leaning towards more the experience of David Benavidez to handle the guy who has not been under pressure and duress as much. I like David Benavidez to win this fight by decision. So those are my thoughts. I would love to hear from you. How do you think this one goes? Who do you have winning? Let me know in the comment section below. So with all that being said, if you've been watching the video this done, do me a favor and like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, and we'll definitely see you next time.